It ended in, oh, thank you, Katie. I forgot we needed to record this. So in case you need to refer back. So that happened for about 10 years. And then 2021, we actually ended it and we worked on what we wanted to replace it with. And so it still needs a better name, you also, if you have anything good, but we're calling it the New Human Services Partnership. And the goal of the entirety of the program, which has 3 different funding rounds, is to address racism, poverty, and trauma as root causes of inequity. That's where we want to be. We want this funding and this investment to make an impact in addressing racism, poverty, and trauma in our community. So the ways that we had designed this program then to do that is to offer multiple funding rounds. So we have 3 different funding rounds. We did a safety net funding round in the spring. We have this current one around the mini grants. And in the closer to the fall winter will be a high impact funding round. So that will be the 3 available funding rounds as part of this program. Another piece of it is that we actually have invited in community reviewers to review and score the application. So it's not a technical thing that staff would do or elected officials. We have people from the community. We try to recruit them to reflect the diversity in our community, their geography, race. We didn't do as well as gender the last time. We had a lot more women than men, but we want different ages, different incomes, and we want to make sure we're representing like the broad diversity within our community, and that those are the folks that are making the recommendations on who should be funded. We want to make sure that we're incorporating equity evaluation into the grant selection process. So we have one of the things that we'll be asking you if you do choose to apply and you're selected, is that you'll be doing an equity self-assessment of your agency with support. We have actually an evaluator on board from U of M, the program evaluation group, that would help folks, but it's a commitment that we ask folks to agree to on the front end, that you would take a look at sort of how do you operate your programs and who's your staff and your board and all those kinds of things to see how that plays out. We really did also work to improve the accessibility and by trying to simplify the application. I really hope this plays out with the mini grant in particular, and we're going to be talking about it. The application is really a fillable PDF. So you hopefully can just type everything you want right into the form. Maybe you put it in Word if you want to spell check and copy it, or however you want to handle it. But the idea that you would just put it in one place and then you can download it and email it in. The other thing that we've built into is within our funding and programming is some flexibility to react to evaluations, and also if there's any emerging needs, like a pandemic. Hopefully we'll never be in a situation again with something that dramatic that changes the course of all the work that we do. But we do want to be able to design this program and work with grantees that if something were to happen, that we would be flexible and be able to pivot to provide the services that the community needs. So I mentioned that there's 3 funding rounds, and right now we are in that 1-year mini grant process. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So the mini grant program, the annual grants are $40,000, just a flat amount. If you ask us for less, I guess you can, but we want to give out $40,000 grants. We have a little bit over $400,000 in funding, so it looks like we'll be awarding about 10 grants. So just so you know, kind of, what your chances are, I guess, and what's available to you. We're looking to do 10 $40,000 grants. Now, this round in particular is focusing on smaller organizations who are addressing poverty, racism, and trauma as the root cause of institutional inequity. So to that end, we're asking folks to apply that have overall budgets of $1 million or less. There's some very large nonprofits in our community, and they were eligible within that safety net funding round. And so this one is targeted just for smaller organizations. We also have a goal of allocating 60%, so 6 of the 10 grants, if you will, to organizations that are led by individuals with underrepresented identities. So we wanted to make sure that we are, and that could be anything from being BIPOC led, could be a person with different abilities, it could be religious background, could be anything, but with just this idea that we want to make sure that, again, we're supporting organizations that represent the diversity of our community. Any questions so far? Okay. So just some of the nitty-gritty details. The RFP opened up, actually, I think they post them on Sunday, but sort of Monday. Hopefully no one's looking at this on a Sunday night, but maybe you did. Submissions are due on Tuesday, September 20th. So just about 4 weeks or a month to do it. Again, it's a pretty simplified application form. So hopefully this will work well for you and won't take too much time to put together. I just want to know it's due at 3 p.m. If you're like me, someone tells you a day something's due, you're like, oh, I got till midnight. So no, it's 3 p.m. So just make a note of that. There'll be, we said it was a fillable form that you can use, and then you'll have to save it. We ask that you save it using the mini grant, your agency name, and maybe the name of the program that you're asking for funding for, and then you're going to email it to our purchasing department. And that's all those instructions are in the RFP as well. But if not, it goes to Angela Perry at washtenaw.org. So the other big thing that is important for eligibility, you might have to download this PDF, and then it has to be signed by whoever's authorized to sign for your agency. It could be an executive director, it could be your board chair. So whoever it is, that signature page has to be signed, or purchasing won't accept it. And I just want to call that out. I know it's a very technical thing, but I would hate for you to spend the time writing a beautiful proposal and then for something that simple to hold you back. So make sure that it's signed, that it's emailed in, and you make that 3 o'clock deadline. Okay. In addition to the kind of proposal that's part of that PDF that we're talking about, if you are a 501c3, you'll have to provide your tax exempt status. If you're not a 501c3, but you're working with another fiscal, somebody else to be your kind of fiscal agent, you can do that. If you haven't identified someone yet, you're not a 501c3, just let us know that, and we can help you partner potentially with another agency. So for some reason, and it's okay, maybe you're in a brand new agency, or you've been volunteer based most of the time. If that's the case and you don't have anybody, like you're not a formal 501c3 nonprofit, just let us know that, and we can see if we can get a partner for you, should you be successful. Okay. If you are 501c3, we're going to want to see some of your financial documents. So if you have an audit, if you have a 990, some of those technical forms that you usually have to send in. We're also going to want to sort of understand your leadership. So if you have an organizational chart, or if you have a different structure where maybe there's co-leadership, or it's more of a cooperative sort of collaborative flat or agency, however you're structured, tell us about us. If there's a chart, great. If you want to write about it, that's fine too. Okay. All right. So have any of you got a chance to look at the RFP? I just want to maybe a show of hands or a thumbs up or something. Have people been able to look at it? Okay. Yes. Okay, great. So there is a formal, oh good. I'm seeing a couple more things pop up. So you can, we tried to make it simple with the PDF that you can just type right in. If you don't want to use that, that's fine. You can also do it your own version and send that in however you want to do it. We're trying to make it, again, pretty simple so that you can just kind of fill in the boxes. And so this is an example that Katie cut and pasted right from that fillable form. So we say what we'd like to see. We have a limit of characters, and you can type right into that box. So trying to make it really simple, the whole entire form. The form has everything. It has all the questions that we wanted answered. It has the checklist of things to attach. And it also has that scoring rubric, which is basically what we're going to have the community reviewers use to kind of when they actually do the review of the grants. So it's probably worth looking at so you understand, oh, if I'm writing about the program description, what are they looking for? What are they going to want to see that I include in that? You can look in that section of the score and see how you did. Or you might want to write the whole thing and then have somebody else that you know that you respect, or who knows you and your agency, maybe take a look at it and sort of coach you back on it. So it's the idea that you'll have all that information about how it's going to be reviewed so that you can hopefully do really well on this in this process. Let me take you through a few more questions. It's pretty easy, right? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So our contract with the county starts this year in October. So our 990 form for the 2021 to 2022 year is 0. Is that a problem, or like?
Nope. And I would just want you to tell us about it, right? So you can say, it sounds like you might be a little bit newer agency or organization. Yes, so correct. Just tell us when you started, and we totally understand if you're brand new that you're not going to have a 990. So we just need to know that background. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
for asking
Thank
that
you.
question. Yeah. Great. Here's another example of a question, just sort of what's your staffing like? Who's the team that's going to do the work, right? So you tell us about the project or the program you'd like to do, and it could be new, it could be something existing. It doesn't have to be, but it doesn't have to be something new. So it's up to you. Tell us about the team who would be doing the work, and then tell us what you expect the positive impacts of the program to be. You know, so if we were to invest or fund it in the program, and y'all are successful in whatever the program looks like, what's the great outcome, or what do you expect to change to really help whoever you're serving? So that's what this section's about. We also want to hear a little bit about your program participants and who you're going to be serving. I already heard some of you talk about very specific groups that you're serving. So some of you are working with youth, some of you are working with people in the criminal, coming out of the criminal justice system, seniors, and you know, Black and brown young men. So like, that's who exactly we want to hear about. So who are you working with, and who are you intending to serve? Tell us a little bit about their demographics, or if there's a specific geography. Some of you might be working in specific neighborhoods. So that's the kind of information we'd like to hear about here. One of the big sections that's pretty unique, is new, is a root cause analysis. And we write a lot about this for those of you who took a look at the application. One of the goals of this mini grant program is, again, to address one or more of the root causes of institutional inequity. So if we're talking about poverty, racism, and trauma being those root causes, we want to kind of understand like what you're proposing, how this funding is going to be used to get to that. So if you're saying, I'm going to do a reading program with young people, kind of take us through it, you know, ask the question, why is it important? Why is it getting to the root cause? Like how does it get to poverty, racism, and trauma? I'm sure you all know it, but it would be great to have you kind of explain that so we can understand how the programmatic or project element that you're doing is really going to address one of those root causes. A lot of times you have to just keep asking yourself why, if you've done this before. It's like sort of getting down a layer deeper until you hit the core of the work that you do. Any questions about that? Okay, all right. So we'd love to hear a little bit about sort of your organization, your agency, and your approach to equity overall. And it depends on your agency. If you're brand new, you might be doing kind of one thing right now. Some of you sounds like you're doing a number of different programs and projects. So getting understanding kind of sort of agency-wide, organization-wide, your approach to addressing inequities would be wonderful to know about. So that's something we'd want to hear about here. The last one was more about the program or the project. This one's about your whole organization. Okay. And then the next one is around agency strengths. So what makes your organization amazing? Like where's your strengths? How, you know, you've probably got incredible people on your team, or a really interesting approach, or you might be the only person doing this kind of service in the community. Whatever it is, tell us about that. And then, because we're trying to be real about things, we know nobody's perfect. We also want to know about areas of growth. You know, where you can see maybe it's a shift that you're like, we've been doing this for years, but it's not enough. We want to add something else. Or we just had turnover in our agency, our leadership changed and we're rebuilding, or whatever it might be. You know, lots of things going on in our community right now, but it'd be helpful to also understand kind of a little bit about those growth areas for your organization. So one of the things we just are wondering about folks who've been previously funded, this one doesn't get scored. We're just interested to know if you've actually been funded by the county before, or the city of Ann Arbor, since they are the main funders within this program. And then you're going to fill out a budget, okay? And we try to make it pretty simple. So as you can see here, if you're doing a budget for a particular program or a project, you might be paying for staff, and that's okay. Well, people always ask, like, can we pay for staff? You can pay for staff. So just kind of break it up. Or you might not be. Maybe this is something where you need to actually contract out for somebody, or you need different equipment, or you're paying for rent. So we're not going to judge on that. It's about the program that you're running, and then just tell us how you're going to spend the $40,000 grant here. And just tell us a little bit about it. So if it is salary, like, is it keeping a staff person, bringing somebody on? If it is rent, tell us about like what facility you're using. Just describe a little bit about whichever those lines you're filling in. And then the next question is just sort of about your agency overall, sort of your agency revenue. If you, Peter, I don't mean to pick on you, but if it's zero, it's going to be pretty easy, right? Fill it in. But if you've been around for a while, I mean, you just tell us kind of what it costs to run your organization, right? We did say that this is for folks that are $1 million or less. And we'll probably be seeing your 990s or other documentation, but just show us kind of how you're actually funding your organization. Okay.
Good question.
Yeah. So
would this also include funding that we will get from the county, because as an agency, we're getting reimbursed for the services?
I think you should just explain it to us, because Peter, I don't actually know. We've not done this before. So I can't, I would just say you're expecting to get funding. Did you say October? Tell us a little bit about if it's reimbursed through, if it's through a particular department. That'd be fine.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I too have a question.
Yes.
Because I know I'm going to be asked this. On the previous screen, I think indirect, U of M always has these indirect expenses.
Yeah. And we put something, here it is, overhead costs, including indirect, should not exceed 5%. It's kind of small over here. So yes, we had somebody else who was affiliated with the university ask that question. So we were prepared this time. So
Great, thanks.
Yeah, we really want it, since it's only $40,000, we'd like to see the majority of it go to the project or program. But then we also understand there are some costs, and if somebody's also using a fiscal agent, they might want to provide some funding for people who might be handling the contract and things like that. Thanks for asking that. Yes. Suzanne, I think your hand's up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure I understood the difference between this slide and the subsequent slide. This is total agency annual revenue, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so for Peace Neighborhood Center, because we had a quite unique year last year with a special campaign to build some endowment funds as part of the 50th, what the annual revenue will show on our latest 990 isn't necessarily what we raise every year. It all gets, a form like the 990 isn't going to distinguish it. So there's a difference between the revenue we raise for annual programming and what will happen to show up on our most previous 990, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and so I think, if you want to if I hear you wanting to separate out the capital campaign, so maybe you can write up something separate that explains, hey, on the 990 you're seeing this, here's why. Right. And then on the budget, you're seeing this. And so the reviewers or staff will be able to say, oh, okay, now I totally understand the story of what's happening.
Right. And again, for one other clarification, the slide previous was that these are annual expenses and then the actual program costs. So is this at the agency or the program level? Because
this is the mini grant program here. So this column you would be filling in for whatever the program or project that you're asking for funding for.
Yes.
So this is like the $40,000. How would you spend the grant, right? And then this one is your total agency or organization. And it would include, or I guess, would it include I would say no, I wouldn't include the $40,000. The $40,000 we have on the previous slide will show us how you want to spend it. This slide would just be your normal, I guess, annual agency revenue.
Right. And it's okay that our new program budget, that we'd be requesting funding for would fit within this agency revenue. I mean, there's a difference between expense and revenue. Yes.
Yes,
Okay, thanks. I just want to be
fair
sure.
enough, fair enough. I appreciate that.
Clear. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we didn't, yes, understood.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, so this is just the link. We can send this out after the meeting if you need it, but if not, it's on the county's website to get to the bid documents. And hopefully most of you got the email telling you about the funding opportunity with the link to it. You know, we really wanted it not to beat a dead horse, but because there's two documents there, right? There's just the regular proposal and then there's the fillable form. So if you want to click on the supporting documentation, RFP 8358 fillable RFP, that's the one that when you download, you just type right into it and then be able to, you know, get your signature page, get your attachments and email everything back in. One of the things that Katie in particular, she tested it out this morning just to make sure it was working. Katie, you want to give any tips about how to save it just so folks know?
Yeah, so you can always refer back to this PowerPoint recording, but there's kind of two ways to use the fillable PDF. You can either download it directly to your computer and then type right into it, or you can actually type directly into the browser, and then when you hit download, it'll ask you with or without your changes, and if you select with your changes, it'll actually download that completed form, which is kind of nice. So little nuances, but either way should allow you to complete the fillable RFP.
And while you all seen, well, not everybody, somebody's on your phone. It does look, we did test it on a mobile device, so it should also work on a tablet or a phone, although that would take you a while to maybe, some of you might type really well with your thumbs. I do not, but it is possible if you, for some reason you're in a situation where you need to fill it out on a mobile device, you should be okay to go.
There's
Yep.
a question in the chat.
Oh, yes, I missed that. Thanks. I'm not able to grab it because I'm sharing my screen. Can you read it to me, Katie?
Yeah, it says, could you please share what company is going to provide equity evaluation services?
Yeah, so it's the University of Michigan School of Social Work's Program Evaluation Group. They're going to be doing two things with successful grantees. One is to actually provide some support around data collection and reporting. We know that everybody's in a different place as far as having the ability to kind of track who you're serving and be able to report out on that. And so they'll be able to actually help support folks. If you have something existing, they're just going to work with you to set up some goals and outcomes to report on. If you don't, they'll work with you to set up, to help kind of set up a system on how you can track that information. So that's one piece of it. And then they're also going to be helping with what's like an equity self-assessment. So they're not going to be evaluating an agency about what your equity like. They're going to be giving you tools so that you can do a self-assessment and lay out kind of a plan for things you might want to do to incorporate equity more. And then they will also have some resources available and some learning spaces set up to support people in that area. One of the things that we've heard from nonprofits is, of course, we want to do equity. Absolutely, that's a focus, but we don't have extra staff, or sometimes we can't free up the time. And so the idea is that we want to provide extra support and capacity, not asking you to do one more thing on top of the many things that you do. Peter.
Hello. So I'm just curious, because as right now, we are partnering with the CTAC Center at U of M to launch a pilot program eval. And so even just in case if we don't get the funding, I'm just curious on who exactly will we be able to pass on this report to once it's finalized? Would it be you or would it be somebody else in this department?
The report or the evaluation that we're working on?
No.
The CTAC report you're talking.
Yeah. Yep.
Which department are you getting funding through, Peter?
So we're getting funding through the county in the child welfare department.
Oh, okay.
And so I just wanted to make sure that I have the right people to pass this report to, because we just want to make sure that the people in this department and in the community have up-to-date information about the things that we are doing and the outcomes that we are doing as well.
Well, Peter, I will always have a copy of report. I love hearing what's going on, but it sounds like it might have to go also to DHHS or one of the, I think you said it was wasn't it Child Protective Services and folks like that, or?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So probably DHHS, but I can connect with you offline and make sure you're connected to the right person over there for that.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm going to make some notes real quick so I don't forget, Peter. Great. Okay. All right. We talked about some of these things. I'm going to go to the next slide. I mentioned before that we've included in that fillable RFP the actual scoring rubric. And so, we ask one of the questions about, tell us about your agency, and then here's how it's going to be scored, right? So to get the maximum points, hopefully you'll be telling us a comprehensive descriptions of the agency, a little bit about your mission vision. It's clearly articulated, and we can tell what the core programming services are. Remember, these are community reviewers. They may know nothing about your organization, or they may know a lot. We don't know. So just imagine that your reader doesn't know anything about your organization, and sort of try to be as clear and concise about it as you can. Same thing we asked that question about, what services or programming or project are you going to do? And so we'd be looking for the maximum points, that it's a very clear articulation about what the programming is, maybe some of the steps on what happens, so people understand what the project or the program is, that it's easily understood by any reader, because remember, community reviewers that might not know anything about, they might also not know anything about the work. Like for those of you in the criminal justice system, you might have folks that don't know anything about the criminal justice system, or don't know anything about housing, or not really connected to education. So you can't assume that your reader works in the same area as you. That's probably the biggest coaching thing I could tell you, is to try and make sure that, anyone who walks, obviously people who are going to be scoring are people who care about this type of work, but you can't assume that they're going to know in detail. Try not to use too many acronyms, or if you need to use them, explain them first, and then sort of make sure you're explaining things out and don't assume that they know those references. Okay. The next one is around program management, right? This question is about who's going to be delivering the work or running the program or the project that you have. So how does staffing structure work? What are the key responsibilities? Who's doing the work? What capacity is there? That's a good response. So just generally, I think this is here to sort of guide you so you know what folks are going to be looking for. Okay. I don't want to have to go through all of them. Any questions about this and how it's going to be applied? We thought it would be, again, trying to be as very accessible and transparent. We wanted to make sure that you knew when we're asking these questions, what we're looking for in your answers. So again, that you could be successful in the application. Okay. We talked a little bit about the program participants and about who you're going to be serving. And so this is, again, it's looking for a clear understanding of who the program is serving, a thoughtful description about how the programming supports community members with more need and with historically marginalized identities. Because remember, we talked about addressing poverty, racism, and trauma, and then that some of you are going to be working with really specific populations. So just tell us about that in particular. And then again, the root cause analysis, this is one of the bigger sections. And we're going to be looking for, in describing the program or the project, that you clearly identify that root cause of an institutional equity that the program is going to address around poverty, racism, and trauma. It doesn't have to be all three. It could be all three. It could be one or two, but that it is touching on poverty, racism, and trauma. There's a thoughtful and thorough description of the ways the program is going to do that. So again, if you're delivering this service or this program, how does it get to it? How does it get to that core? How is it really addressing poverty, racism, and trauma? And make the link for us. We might not, again, a regular reviewer, and me, I have this trouble too, so I can't just, you know, I think all of us, if we're not familiar with the work that you do, make that link very clear from how the service you're delivering is getting back to addressing poverty, racism, and trauma. Yeah. And then, you know, if you pull, this one's kind of how you pull it all together, that program description, who's doing the work, who you're serving, how you're doing it. It's all going to come together in this question. Okay. Yeah. And then we talked about the agency-wide root cause analysis a little bit before, and then the strengths, you know, what do you have about your organization that makes you well suited to do this work, that makes sure that you are going to address those root causes and your program is going to be successful. Those growth areas that, again, you're thoughtful about, you know, where there's areas to grow and have an understanding of maybe some limits or some areas that you'll have to strengthen in time. And then we'll also be doing something similar to review your budget. Okay. So again, I highly recommend you take some time, you know, either before you write it, or maybe you want to write it first and then look back and compare the rubric and see how, if it makes sense to you, or maybe have somebody else look at it too and compare it just to someone who maybe isn't as familiar. I think that would be helpful for you overall. Any questions on that? Okay.
There was a question in the chat from a few minutes ago.
Okay.
Is an independent audit required?
It is not required. If you have one, we would like it. If you have any other sort of financial statements, we want some way to kind of look at the financial health of your agency. If you're brand new and you don't have that yet, tell us. But if you've been around for a little while, please provide some documentation. Okay. All right. So that obviously the RFP opened here on Monday. We definitely have this time, and we have another info session on Monday. You're welcome to come to another one if you are so inclined. Morgan's going to lead that one, so she'll probably say things a little bit differently, and that might also be helpful. We'll record both of them. This one's being recorded in that one, and they'll be posted. If questions come up afterwards, though, so after this session, or if you attend Monday or not, you can send them in through Wednesday, August 31st. So that's next Wednesday. And then what we'll do is we'll take a couple days to compile questions from this session, Monday session, and any extra questions that come in, and we'll get those posted online. So you could take a look at those and see if later on you're like, oh, I never got this answer, but maybe somebody else asked the question. And then you can go and hopefully it will be there and there'll be some more information that will be helpful. The timing for this overall, the proposals again are due on Tuesday, September 20th at 3. We're going to be pulling the community reviewers together as soon as we can afterwards and having them take a look. Staff is only going to be reviewing that things are complete. Actually purchasing probably to do that. I don't know if we're going to actually have to do much more. And then we're going to hand it over to the community review team to review and score the applications. And then we'll have a discussion and a dialogue related to them. There may be an opportunity to actually present or, you know, answer questions in person. We don't know if we'll do that or not. We may or may not need that. I guess it'll depend on how the proposals look, but if there's some unanswered questions, folks might want to do that. And then we're hoping to finalize those recommendations really at the end of September. And then we'll have to take them to both Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners and Ann Arbor City Council for final approval in October. So you wouldn't hear about an award. Well, I should say, as soon as we have the recommendations and we get them to the board and city council, we'll let folks know what the recommendations are. And then, but they're not official until they're approved by those two bodies. So, so you'll know where you stand, I guess, probably at the beginning of October. But then if you are awarded the grant, we wouldn't be able to give you the formal notice for that until after those decisions. And then we would be looking to contract with folks by the end of the calendar year. Hopefully in November, you know, October, November. All right. Here are the emails. If Angela Perry in our purchasing office is going to answer anything technical about the RFP process. Katie's going to collect any of the questions that come in and help organize them for us to post them. So you can send those as well. I'm going to stop sharing and see what other kinds of questions have come up here. Anything else that's come to mind that you want to ask about?
Quick question.
Yeah.
So at the end of our fiscal year, is there anything that you will want us to do to confirm that the $40,000 was used and what it was used for?
Yes, great question. That's where we're going to be using that group program evaluation group. They would meet with you to set up some kind of reporting requirements. The way we want to do it is actually, we don't want to set something now. We'd rather them meet with you and you co-create what you're going to report on, right? Because you know who you're serving, you know what you're tracking, and then they'll work with you to figure out kind of the details of that. And then yes, we'll be looking for that report at the end of the program.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yvonne.
I may be remembering incorrectly, but maybe not. I think that I saw that there was a question about the salary of the director. Is that right?
I'd have to go and look. I think that, I mean, we may have, but I don't recall. I'll go look really quick.
And if you don't answer, do you get penalized?
There's a lot of questions. Thank you for asking that. I mentioned that we're trying to target 60% of the awards to underrepresented identities. And so there's a number of questions about the executive director or the leadership of your organization. That's how we're going to get to some of that information to know if folks are underrepresented identities, but you're also not required to fill out that information. However, if you don't, we won't know. But if you do, so think about what makes sense for you. I would suggest if you are an underrepresented identity, you might want to fill out that section because that, again, we are trying to prioritize at least 6 of the 10 awards to organizations whose leadership is an underrepresented identity within kind of the nonprofit community broadly. All right, Kalista.
Hi. So for our group, we are just starting out and we're not officially a 501c3 yet and everything. And so we don't have like salaries and things like that set up, but we do want to start paying some of the people that are like our board members or who are helping with different services. How would we present that in our budget? Would it just be under like the contracts part of it, or like how should we try to show that?
That's a great question. I think, if you're not paying anyone, you can put, volunteer, mostly volunteer led. But I would also maybe write a separate like page that explains a little bit about, hey, we're a new organization. Maybe it's where you talk about your organizational structure, who's part of it, and you can let us know if people are mostly volunteer, but you're looking to start paying them and stuff like that. I just kind of tell us your story. That's what we're looking to learn.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Keith.
Yeah, so if we are newly funded, is that something we'll add in? Because like our previously our 990 is under 50,000, so we are newly funded. So should we add that into it, or just what's previous for the year?
Yeah, I mean, give us your 990 and then let us know maybe if you've got some additional funding since then. That'd be great. It doesn't put you over $1 million, I'm guessing.
Nowhere near.
All right, so you're good to go. All right. Jeannie, I think I saw your hand up for a second. And you're muted though.
Sorry. How do you think the funds will get paid out? Would it be quarterly, monthly?
That's a great question. I don't know that we've decided. I know previously we've done quarterly. But I think that's something we can sort out with folks. I know sometimes people are like, well, to bill monthly is more of a pain for me or for the agency, right? Because then you have to generate an invoice. So I think we can work with the grantees to figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Good question though. Any other questions coming up for you as we talk some more? It's also okay if not. The session on Monday, if you want to come to another one of these with similar content, but a different presenter, so it could be a little different. Morgan and I definitely have different personalities, so it'll be a different flair. I think both winning personalities, just so you know. No, but it's Monday between 1 and 2:30. So if you want to hop on that, that recording will be posted. I think Katie put in the chat, we can email the recording, but it's going to be, everything we do is posted on that webpage, that New Human Services Partnership webpage we sent the link for. So we'll put up this one probably tomorrow if we can. And then Monday after that presentation, hopefully Monday, if not, or first thing Tuesday, we'll get the other recording up if you wanted to listen to that one too. And then again, we'll be posting up those questions and all that kind of thing. So anything else that comes to mind, now's the time to ask those questions before Wednesday next week. But thank you all for coming and for your excellent questions. And it was really nice to hear so much about your organizations as well. Thanks so much. I can stick around if people have a couple more questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.